Tim Walz in the state of Minnesota, billion-dollar fraud, not so fast. As the kids say, 9X, Will.
We were shocked when we thought $1 billion of taxpayer money had been fraudulently taken from the Minnesotans as well as the American taxpayers. But now we're finding out from the assistant U.S. attorney that it is $9 billion is more likely, which is half of the amount of federal funding for these Medicaid programs throughout 14 different programs that was given by the federal government. It's also interesting number here. $9 billion is about roughly the GDP of Somalia itself,
Yeah. I mean,
a full country.
So
$9 billion.
Their $18 billion that we've now uncovered outdoes their own country of origin, Somalia, by $7 billion. Their fraud scheme does better than the entire country's GDP in just this small matter of time. But you think about it, you say, how do they do this and no one paid attention? That's what happened. You don't have to be.
How do you spend $9,000 million?
You don't have to be really smart. All they did was they made up fake nonprofits with fake imagery, fake buildings, fake healthcare centers. And you guess what, Logan? I guarantee you in Minnesota, Tim Walz, no one looked to see if they were real.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, this would not have been hard to figure out. If someone said they were doing a business or a nonprofit or housing or healthcare, they'd have to be filing with you. You'd have access to their records. You'd also be able to drive down the street, see if the business is actually operating.
Yeah.
Where is this healthcare being provided? Not hard questions.
I think we should play this bite because it's what we referenced earlier. This is from Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota. His name is Joe Thompson, and he had this to say at that press conference when going over all of this. This is bite 7.
And taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud. It's swamping Minnesota and calling into question everything we know about our state.
So as the federal government continues to look into this, you also think that there is real trouble for the politicians there, Jordan. Ilhan Omar is up for re-election because she's a member of the House, and that comes up every several years. She had some of these individuals that have already been convicted of fraud, she had some ties to. But then you also think about the governor who oversaw all this. The buck stops with him. He's the executive of the state, and he's up for re-election trying to become the first third-term governor in Minnesota modern history, but this is all going on as we look at. You can't deny that the political implications are probably what those members of the Minnesota elected body are thinking of, more so maybe even than the $9 billion that could have gone to Minnesotans who needed it instead of to fraudsters who stole it.
Remember how I played this off at the beginning? Like this is nothing?
Right.
This is like racism. It was Islamophobic, I guess, and xenophobic to even claim that there were more than a few bad actors. And they tried to say, well, this was happening all over the country and everybody was doing this. Yes, there was a lot of fraud, but to have one community take half of an entire state's allotment of funding, half, and did nothing with it but send it places and make it disappear. And so now Somalia, which is a terrorist state, has had an influx of $6 billion more than they make a year in their GDP. Think about that. We just as taxpayers, because of Tim Walz and the morons working there who I guess just wanted to look the other way so they didn't get called Islamophobic for just trying to look out for crime, have realized now they have funded a terrorist state, which also is a good place for foreign terrorists to live in because it's hard for our U.S. military to operate there. So dangerous. That's also the pirates. That's still happening on a basis. So we just gave Somalia an extra year and a half of money.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these quotes that were
So you're
coming
hard
out
on taxpayer dollars.
from this first assistant U.S. Attorney, Joe Thompson. One of my favorite quotes is, every day we look under a rock and find a new $50 million fraud scheme.
Yeah. I mean,
$50 million.
$50 million is
Every day.
tiny compared to $18 billion.
Yeah.
Hey, stop stealing half of a government's program. Look, to even think that that's like something you get away with is wild.
I like that you've pressed us, Logan, on really thinking about the magnitude of these numbers, because when you think about it, the fact that much money, imagine, he says every day we're finding a $50 million fraud scheme. Imagine how much real good work could have gone to the people of Minnesota, regardless how you feel about welfare programs. That money was allocated. That money was sent to Minnesota. And if they actually cared about the citizens of their state, they would have been ensuring that every dollar of that was spent on their citizens who needed it instead of going to criminals. And that's what we see here. That's a lot of money that could have helped a lot of people.
If not a number cruncher. Everyone knows this.
It's your favorite.
I'm very good at these.
You got an award for math in undergrad.
That's true. I get lots of awards. Okay, I don't even remember them.
That's $250 million a week in fraud that they're easily uncovering if they're doing $50 million a day. So $250 million 4 times. Guess what you get to? $1 billion worth of fraud in these programs every month outside of
1,000 million.
Somalia.
You got to remember when you start talking in terms of billions, I think that's easy to let it roll off the tongue and just like $9 billion.
This wasn't like to a government agency to build aircraft. This is local people in Minneapolis running one of the biggest fraud schemes, maybe the biggest in history when it comes to a Social Security type program, a safety net program in the United States. And $9 billion of our taxpayer dollars gone, probably most of it to Somalia to fund terrorists.
It says Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, like I said the scale of this, it's a staggering industrial scale fraud, as Will said.
The very best case scenario here is that the politicians in the executive branch of the Minnesota government were just completely incompetent at running these programs if half the federal funding is stolen.
You got to wonder why, again, the governor there, who was the failed vice presidential candidate, and he had kind of tried to play all this down at first and say there's fraud everywhere, you're being racist about our Somali community and blah, blah, blah. And then it goes up to $9 million, which is half of the money his state got that he's ultimately responsible for managing to help people, and most of that help kids and those in need of food because of their families in the job crisis during COVID. Instead, what happened was $9 million taken, and now you've got to do all that hard work. Will, and you know how hard it is to get that money back out of Somalia? It's not going to be easy.
Remember how upset the left was? They're like, with Doge, don't look at the Medicaid programs. Right. They're going to take money from people.
$50 million onto every rock you look.
They don't want you looking at Medicaid because they're going to take money away from American citizens. No, that's what the fraudsters were already doing. Imagine how much more efficient and how many more people would have been served if 100% of the $18 billion went to the people it was supposed to. Instead, it didn't.
Whoever is also the administrator, whatever they call that there, whatever position that is in Minnesota, but the state Medicaid administrator, that person, how is it not potentially criminal? I mean, you have to say, how did this get by you? Is it incompetence? I mean, bordering on the line of negligence, which could also be a crime, that you were negligent with the taxpayers' money. So I think that needs to be investigated too, not just Walz, but the people who literally, the offices they're running it through, because they have fraud protection systems in place. Obviously, they didn't work for these, or because it was in the Somali community, they decided to look the other way. I hope the second part is not true and that the blame is more on bad systems, but you have to wonder, since they responded immediately with, don't look here, it's not just Somalis, it's everywhere, and yet we're not finding this everywhere at this scale.